Yeah.
Okay. All right. Morning, everyone. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning. And my name is Simon Finch, and I work for Northern Grid for Learning. Northern Grid is a not-for-profit organisation that is owned entirely by 7 local authorities in the northeast of England. And our original and core business is delivering and managing broadband to our 470-odd schools. And we have an e-learning team that's been in existence for about 10 years, and I'm a member of the e-learning team. And my remit goes across technology in classrooms, learning platforms, mobile learning, IPR, copyright, and also e-safety. And e-safety fills a huge amount of our time. And I work not just with schools, but with our charities, LSCBs. Do you have LSCB here? Local Safeguarding Children Board. That is the overarching organisation that is part of the local authority. So anybody who works with young people is part of my remit. So I'll find myself working with police as much as I will with Bernardos, as I will with parents, as I will with childminders, as I will with special schools, and so on. So I was asked if I would come today to talk a little bit about inclusion and working with children who've got special needs. And I work very closely with our SEN ICT advisor in North Tyneside, and we worked closely on this, and we decided that it was better to change the title to Safeguarding for All, because that will become clear, I suppose, as we kind of work our way through it. I'm happy to stop at any time, and I'm also aware that some of you are much more expert, is that right to say that? Expert and experienced than I am with your specific learners and your challenges, and I hope that you'll chip in and share your bits with the other people in the room as well. Is that okay too? Bless you. So who are we talking about? Well, we can say that it's all of these, that it would be about physical and sensory barriers, cognitive barriers, behaviour, and so on. And the known syndrome, so that that's pretty much everybody that we will be dealing with. But that actually doesn't help me very much, because what I would suggest to you is that we have a spectrum of need. And Josie, in fact, touched on this too, in terms of talking about the challenges of e-safety, is that we are all at some point vulnerable, whether we're vulnerable adults or whether we're vulnerable young people. And my colleague said, actually, well, the message I would like you to get over is that it's the grey kids. I thought, well, that's not particularly not a very nice way to describe it. So what she meant by those, well, it was actually those that aren't identified by these labels. It's interesting on the news today hearing that there is going to be a shift from labelling and trying to make the process of supporting students easier. Whether we achieve that or not will be something else. But it's those kids that perhaps just fall slightly under the radar, that haven't been identified. I haven't got a big badge on them that says any of these things here, but for one reason or another are vulnerable. And they can be vulnerable temporarily. It may be due to emotional, it might be home circumstances, it might be financial, and so on. So I would rather that we contextualise today as to say that yes, we can say we have specific, and we will look at specific needs, but also to be mindful of that all of the children in our care at some point will be vulnerable. And for those people who come to this session, is anyone planning on coming to How to Lose Your Job this afternoon? If you come to that one, you'll see that there are some of the slides are the same, but my words are slightly different. Because in the end, it's the same whether I'm talking about adult safety as whether I'm talking about special children, or whether it's about what you would call normal or mainstream children. And so our challenge then is the learners, the children, who will exhibit a range of the following by degrees. And you can see I'm already qualifying my language here, because individuals may not necessarily do all of these things. So we can do a kind of nodding game now, where I say, do you have any learners who perhaps demonstrate honesty, unable to be kind of duplicitous, if you like? Is that what duplicitous? Lie. Lie, perhaps. And that they are literal. that if we say something, they believe us. They take it at face value. When I first started my teaching, my tutor from the university came. He said, well, you're very good, very good. But you do have an ironic manner, don't you? And what he meant by that was that perhaps I was a little sarcastic with the kids. And if you were sarcastic to some kids, then they will believe you. So if you say, oh, you're going to die if you don't finish that library in time, then for some of our children, they will find that alarming. Is that okay? Are we sort of moving in the right place? So, and then some will be attention seeking. That they want attention. They want attention by doing bad things or by doing good things. And that means then that they will be vulnerable when we're talking about being online, because they will actively go out to gain attention. And there will be attention seeking in a positive way and also in a negative way. And that takes us through to all of the discussions that we had a little earlier about taking their clothes off, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. And then we have the used to following instructions. So if we have children in our care who are used to a range of adults and neo-adults, the young people who are working with them too, who give them instructions and they have to follow them, then they too will be vulnerable. And we'll look at examples of that. Please do kind of stop if you say, actually, you're talking rubbish here. We'll see how we go through, because I'm very happy to kind of discuss through the nuances of this. And unworldly, very kind of naive. And I guess that is, for many of you, the big challenge is socialising and preparing them to live an independent and autonomous life. And trusting. And these are all kind of go hand in hand with one another. This is where I'm going to get my... Did you say ears, nose and hair that you were going to be drawing? Is that what you said? Trying to make my nose look smaller, that's all I'm asking. Smaller nose. And unable to transfer skills and understanding. And what that means is that for some of our kids, for some of the kids that we're working with, we could teach them for days and days and days and days how to use Facebook, and give them all of the skills in that, and then a new social tool comes up, and they don't transfer that they've learned there into the new environment, and we have to start all over again. Is that right? So moving on then. This is a slide that I show all of the time in pretty much wherever, it doesn't matter whether I'm working with police or charity or whoever. This is what e-safety means to me, and this is how it works for us in our area, is that we can divide it down into, it's the students and it is the hardware, the bits and bobs, but that also includes the data management, you've got personal details about colleagues and information about learners and the kinds of learners that you may have. There's a lot of file transfer of information as it goes from one professional to another, and how we manage that so that we don't find ourselves being blamed for that data in the wrong place. And then it's the adults that work with the young people, and they all have their e-safety challenges. So for us, and I apologise for not being familiar with the Scottish system, what happens is that the head is personally liable for the safety of the children. That works under Health and Safety at Work, and it works under the Education Act, and also because the governing body devolved the budget pretty much to the head, and so they are responsible for spending the money correctly. So as simple as that, as making sure that there aren't loose fittings that kids will slip on and split their heads open on one level, and then protecting them too. And so the way that we manage that is through acceptable use policies. So we will think about acceptable use policies as we work through the session then. Is that you need to have appropriate acceptable use policies, and I will qualify that by saying that they have to be acceptable use policies. They are acceptable in as much as they are managing the risk and looking after the children and our colleagues, but that they also allow us to do our job properly. And so frequently what happens is people will come to me at the end of the session and say, do you know where I can get an acceptable use policy? And they go Googling on the internet, and they find one for another school like theirs, and they copy and paste it, and there they've got one. But nobody knows what those policies are, and that then gives us challenges, and we'll see why those challenges come along. We can also talk about Ofsted as well. Now, part of my job is actually to go in firefighting and fixing and helping when the bad thing happens. And I thought I'd share this with you, because this came via an email of where the judgment was made on safeguarding, and these are the bullet points on which the school failed. And they work for us, and these are, you know, if you take nothing else from this session, it will be about correct procedures, policies not in place, records not up to date, and appropriate training not undertaken. Those are the key parts of making sure that we can provide our support. And we can then narrow that down to 3 things, which would be about policies, practice, and training and infrastructure. You need to have policies that allow you to do your job properly and effectively, that protect the children. And the practice is people doing stuff day in, day out that match those policies. So what happens is when Ofsted comes for our schools, if somebody will open a filing cabinet and say, there's all our policies, please do take them away. If you go and talk to the individuals who work with the young children, then what we see is that there's no matching up. Well, I didn't know that was in our policy. Nobody ever showed me it. And so we've got a whole lot of induction of new members of staff of CPD throughout the year, and also when they're leaving as well. And this is a mantra that somebody quoted it on me yesterday, so I must say it all the time, which is that we must be seen to be managing the risks to the best of our ability. We cannot eliminate the risks that will happen to our children. So I started teaching in the 80s, and in the 80s I was a secondary school teacher. I was English, drama and dance. Thank you very much. I know. I was phased out of dance quite quickly. And we had a residential place in Hood and Roof in the Lake District. They came to me almost immediately and said, are you married? I said, no. Can you drive? Yes. Young male, you can drive a minibus. It's a big manly thing, that's what happens, men drive them. And you take them over there, and when I got there with this group of kids, it said you're going to take them rock climbing, you're going to take them swimming, you're going to take them... And there was just this assumption that a bloke would be able to take kids doing that sort of stuff. And what we saw, and we'd seen previously, was disasters and unpleasant and awful things happening to children on all kinds of visits. We didn't stop our visits nationally. What we did was we started to put policies and risk assessment in place to allow us to do our job properly. And so that then, which what we would say is that we continue to do our visits, we continue to do our internet activity, we continue to allow youngsters and encourage them to embrace the new technology because it is empowering, knowing that there are risks, and we will do everything that we can to manage those risks so that when the bad thing happens, and I did a session a few years ago with a head teacher of a primary school, and she was, would it be okay to say, in the twilight of her career? She'd been around for a while, and she said that she was mentally psyched for the bad thing happening because statistically it was going to happen. The number of visits, the number of events that her school was involved in, a bad thing would happen. A child would be left at the place, there would be a minibus crash, somebody would come into difficulties in water and so on. And we must keep that fixed in our minds. We want to do our job properly for the best of our children and the families that we support. So then we can ask a question which would be something like, how many online identities do you have? So we might as well ask our group here, how many have you got? Well, I'll take another swig of my coffee. Yes, miss?
1.
Do you? It is? On Facebook, thank you. So we have a Facebook account. Do you want any advance on Facebook? Oh, Facebook, yes, miss.
3.
3, what have you got?
MySpace people on Facebook.
MySpace people on Facebook. I feel a little rap coming on. Yeah?
Twitter, Facebook.
Twitter, Facebook.
Personal website.
Personal website. Blog. So we see then that actually we could have a series of, and Josie touched on this, identities that form our bigger identity. When you said 1, I was thinking, oh, you're going to be clever and say, I've got 1 and it encompasses another.
Just mean I've only got one thing.
Yeah,
But then, you know, like you said, you
I've yet to ascertain which is the clever table. We've always worked out the back table. I would say it's very quiet at the moment. I need to invade the space and see if we can get in there. And I was so pleased that Josie said digital natives is a load of rubbish. Do you know what that is about digital natives and digital immigrants? Prensky said it about 12 years ago, something like that, and he kind of denied and said that he hadn't really been quoted correctly. But he had this view that young people are natives to the digital world, and we old people, and the more I do this, the less old people there are of my epoch in the room, but we'll kind of nod towards you for a moment, okay? Me and the bloke down here. Are digital immigrants, and that doesn't necessarily help. There's a guy called Dave White, and there's quite a few. Who uses Twitter? Alright, so follow Dave White. He's at Oxford University, and he came up with, I don't think he came up with, he discusses residents and visitors, and I think that's a better analogy. Works for me anyway, which is that actually as a resident we know where the plumber is and we know where the library is, and we're all kind of happy with that. And when we're a visitor, then perhaps we're a little disorientated. We know that stuff is there, but we're not quite as comfortable how it goes. That's my mummy over here on this side. And she's almost 80, and she most definitely is a visitor. She's in some poetry group on a Monday morning. I go and see her on the Sunday, and there needs to be a search for a poem, a copy and paste into Word, so she can do 2 copies, so her and her husband can have copies of this poem. And you can see she sits rigid, beads of blood forming on her forehead, and I have plenty of time to take lots and lots of pictures, and she most definitely is a visitor. What Dave White says, and I think he is right, is that we're all on a kind of sliding scale of this. And sometimes we can be residents, sometimes we can be visitors. For me, I think probably I've got a holiday home online, which I have a place that I go to where I'm very comfortable, everybody knows me and everything's fine. And there are other places, if I'll stray 50 yards down the road, somewhere else onto the interweb, onto the social identity network thing, I'm a little less certain. That then is giving us a big challenge for our youngsters. It is more complicated than, well, we'll see if we can get them on Facebook, and when they're texting, we'll try and make sure that they're safe. Is that alright? So we've started to kind of contextualise that a little bit. And that then takes us to... Okay? And this then is something then. So you can say yay, no. So we can say Skype, yay, yeah. Speaking on our phone, texting on our phone. World of Warcraft, this is such an interesting thing. The number of times that I have parents that will say, oh, my child's very safe on the internet, he just plays games. As if there wouldn't be paedophiles in there. And when we talk about... I'll talk about grooming a bit later, because grooming is very, very complicated. Very complicated, and it's not as straightforward as how could you be so stupid as to believe that that was a young person. We'll get on to that. Email, blogging, WordPress, eBay. eBay is a place for conversations. Does anybody use eBay? I don't. I think it's full of lies and cheats, but no offence. But in there, we should all talk like they talk on eBay for a day, because it's smashing. I would say, prompt payer, good service, thank you. That's all they talk on, isn't it? You hardly ever seen it. And if there is a negative, it's what do you mean by that? It's the inverse of Facebook. On Facebook, it's how rude can I be? How offensive can I be? I will say anything that comes into my mind and just lol afterwards. Like that. And so down here we then have Bluetooth. Oh, we'll have a look at Bluetooth in a minute. Flickr, there's conversations going on in there. Amazon, we're having our conversations. Anybody who had to complain about things not being delivered at Christmas because it snowed apparently a little bit. Facebook, YouTube, those conversations that come into there. And then we have Twitter. We have speaking and writing as well. So that's your challenge in terms of the young people in your care. So we're sorted. Are we done now? Should we go for an early lunch? Alright, so where does that then take us to? The next bit then is about saying, you know, we want to be careful on the internet because there are predators out there, not just sexual, but there are predators out there who pretend to be someone else to get close to our children. When perhaps, actually, what we could say is that we all do it. So these are real avatars. That's a newspaper story in the middle. The poor lady over there was having an affair in her second life with another man, and her husband found out, and it was a complicated relationship thing. You know, nobody touched anyone, but there it is. And these are typical of the kinds of avatars. We're now seeing companies saying perhaps their employees need to tidy up their avatars because they're a little too sexual for when they're meeting on video conferences for international things and so on. So we shouldn't be surprised then that our children, and those children who perhaps aren't physically whole, if we can say that, will leap at the opportunity to have an avatar and to have a life where they are whole, where they are perceived to be normal as accepted to be. And where this takes us through to is how many of your children want to be normal. Is it some of them or is it all of them? Yeah. For those that are able to cognitively think it through, they want to be. And what we have is, and Carol and I were talking about this, is that we see again and again when we go into our special schools and when we go into our mainstream schools, there will be teachers there to say, oh yeah, we've got little Lucy here. And Lucy has Down syndrome and she's fully integrated in the class. You see Lucy sitting here and she's got her work, she's sitting with the other kids, she's fully integrated and we're a big happy family here. And then when we're out leaving the school and you see playtime, Lucy's Billy No Mates over in the corner because she's not integrated at all. Lucy is different. And she doesn't function on the same level, and at times she is excluded from what's happening. And so what we can say is actually, we can see why they would want to be embracing their online existence. And we talk about Facebook as though it was this kind of evil thing, and I think it is evil, but it's evil for reasons that most people don't kind of dwell on first, is that it's a commercial business, and as a commercial business it has been very cavalier in the way that it is treating people's personal information, and that's why I object to Facebook. But blimey, this is a screen dump from probably 2 years ago now. The number of opportunities that are out there for our learners, for our young people in our care, to engage will continue to grow exponentially. And the mistake will be to say, oh, but we're now going to teach all of our kids to use Facebook. Because that's not what the challenge is. Our challenge is to make them digitally aware and digitally safe, and that is going to be something which is quite hard for us. So we get this kind of thing that's going on, which is when I'm working with people like Sia, and I get police officers who are also on the stage with us, what we get is the police officer saying, under no circumstances would a daughter of mine have a webcam in her bedroom. And you get this black, that's how police officers talk where I come from. And the men are the same. And I don't think that's very helpful. And who's got teenage kids of their own? What's all this stuff about looking over their shoulder while they're on the computer? I've got 2 girls, they're 19 and 16, so I've seen them go through this whole digital revolution. The chances of me being over his shoulder are pretty remote, actually. And they do have webcams. And so we could say webcam, tool of Satan, you must never use it. And there are lots of reasons why you must never use it. Lots and lots of reasons. Why would you put a camera that is capable of being controlled remotely in your house? You could be burgled, they can see what kind of telly you've got. They can see, if it's in the kids' bedroom, when they're just getting ready for bed. It can be recorded and controlled remotely. I was doing a session with social workers, and police were there as well, and it was this kind of room size. And I was saying, you know, there are programs that you can put onto people's computers as malware, and then you can control the camera and turn it on and off. And so we need to be mindful. A camera is a useful and a dangerous tool. So, put blue tack over it, close the lid, put a sock over it, manage that risk and manage the benefits of it. And the bloke down here said, oh, I used to do that. It's great for him. I used to make the CD drawer come in and out and control people's cameras. I said, you know, that's an offence. And he's a policeman sitting next to you. He said, aye. But it was years ago. We can't do you for stuff that was happening years ago. I said, have you not seen Waking the Dead? Well, it just seems bizarre, isn't it? But if you were deaf, then a webcam is an absolutely essential bit of kit in terms of, I'm doing a mime of Makaton chat now, which isn't helping, of communicating, isn't it? And will open up all kinds of meaningful opportunities for our young learners. So we can't simply say, oh well, webcams are a thing that we can't be using. But then we need to be mindful of this, is that for some of our students, they will take their clothes off because they're told to. Because someone's telling them to take their clothes off almost every day. Let's have a look at it today. Let me help you with that. Just take your clothes off and then we can get on with work. And that's how their lives are. So we do need to give them some kind of skill. We'll look at this a little further on, about what is a friend, what is a trusted person, and how do we instill in our youngsters, how we can move on from that. So, and I don't want to look like, what I object to is Simon Finch is an expert in e-safety. I don't think that's very helpful. What I can say is that I've been immersed in it for over 6 years now, and so I have more experience than some people, but that's kind of like being an expert in where you live. It's not necessarily meaningful. I received this email 2 years ago on a Monday morning. I said that learning platforms was part of my remit. I have the password for the administration of all 470 learning platforms. It's also in the local authorities as well. I get an email that says, I forgot my password and admin name for a school, for a primary school. Please can you send it to me? I need to move the children up year group. Now that is a complicated concept for me to get into teachers, which is when the kids are in year 5. In the summer, you'll have to move them into year 6 on the platform, otherwise they won't see their work. So I get this email, and I'm thinking, well, should I send the password through? Well, actually, I wouldn't. I wouldn't send the password by email. I phone up the local authority and say, do you want me to do it, or should you do it? Because really polite, they should do it. Give it a couple of hours, I get the email back again. It says, "Hi Sam, the lad that sent that is 8 or 9 years old at a special school. And the head says that he's actually been in trouble before for pretending to be someone older on Facebook." And that, I think, it's a really nice little line in the sand for all of us, which is that we need to be vigilant that our kids and our child can be challenging in the way that they will behave. And one of the things that we can look at is that we talk about the kids being victims. Our kids can also be the bullies. They can be the bullies because they think that gives them some kind of acceptance amongst the other ones. They can be the one that says the words and gets into trouble and does the thing. So have a look at this video. This video works for me on lots of different levels. We'll look at it today.
Hey, Sarah.
Oh, she's so cute.
I'm doing my good talk. Love the new tattoo, Sarah.
Hey, that's Sarah. The girl in the pink shirt, that's the girl I was telling you about.
Peter, too, on your left. Hey, Sarah. What color underwear today?
Hey, Sarah. So when are you going to post something new?
Anything you post online, anyone can see. So think before you post.
Now, it's interesting really, I've got loads and loads of videos that I could have shown. I chose to show this one today because usually the message is think about what you post because people can see it, and it works very well for me because I actually missed the message of it when I first started doing this, which was, and I would say this to my own kids, you know, if you're taking your top off, which is what girls will do, girls want to show, as they're growing up, they want to show off their upstairs department. Boys put the hoods up. That's a little observation I can share with you about how kids use the interweb. Then somebody in Russia or South America might see those pictures, and my kids will look at me like, actually, I don't mind if there's somebody over there because I look nice. I'm sharing with my mates. I've got my makeup on. I've got my little eyeliner, and I'm all looking jiggy. But in fact, the message is that your locality, the people that you know, the person who sees you across the road, the person in the shop, the person on the bus stop, the person in the cinema, the people who you do know, who you would be embarrassed to be seen in your pyjamas in the middle of that night street. They're the ones that can see it. But then if we can change the context a little bit and say, well, actually what we're doing is we're talking about our children that have got additional needs and challenges, then we can see that actually then becomes really quite a useful resource in saying they may want to show themselves and share themselves and say, you know, you think that I go to that school down there, which is different, but I'm the same as you, and I'm going to do exactly the same as I've seen everybody else, and I'm going to post myself out there so that you can see me, and they see everybody else doing it. We can talk about what is normal, and I'll touch on this in the afternoon. If you see everybody else demonstrating normal behaviour, then our kids and our care will think that is normal behaviour, even though we know that normal isn't right. Is that right? Are we okay with this? So when we're talking about being online, we can have you seen this? This is a lovely little resource, which is Facebook's sharing permissions. When you start a Facebook account, this is the default permissions. That's what we get. So I'm just get myself around it. We're on 2005, so that was the default setting. So if you got a Facebook account in 2005, you're in the middle, then it's friends, then it's network, then it's Facebook users, and the outside circle is the entire internet. So with a new account, you can see your stuff, and then we can then also see that in terms of your friends, they would see your name and your picture and your gender and your other profile data and your friends and so on. So what we do is that we advance it on. So we then get to 2006, and we can see that we get more blue. So I'll just save some time here. So in April of 2010, that is the default sharing on Facebook. And you start your account. And the outer circle is the entire internet. So that's, you might as well, you know, you can decode the picture as much as you want afterwards. But it means that the entire internet can see who your friends are, which network you're in, all the wall posts, all the photos, all the likes, all the names, the picture, the gender, the profile data. So we cannot underestimate the challenge that we have in protecting our youngsters from posting to anybody and how we then behave online. That is a very useful graphic there. And so that if our youngsters are then going to, and what I would suggest to you, if you haven't done this already, is to be thinking about what is personal information. Do you do this with your kids? What is personal information? So here's a question for you then. Which is more personal, more private, your mobile or your landline? The house phone or your mobile? Which one is it? I know. That wasn't rhetorical, I'm waiting for an answer.
To me, it's my mobile. It's more personal than my mum.
Thank you. Well, one mobile. Mobile.
Mobile.
Mobile.
Yes.
House. I'll tell you what, I think it's interesting because the house one has always been my personal bit of information. You don't let people in the house, you don't give your house phone number. But increasingly what I'm seeing is nobody uses our landline. I'm paying BT something like £80 a quarter. And the only person who uses it is my mum phoning us. It's her and those recorded things. Good afternoon. The landline has become obsolete. So actually working with, we need to be mindful of that, and that has changed, that when we're teaching our kids about personal information, there will be nuances of change. One of the personal bits of information will be the address, or will be the postcode. And what you can do then is that, because you can enter your postcode in your personal information, so you can do a search on MySpace, for example, for postcode. So if you are a paedophile, let's talk about that as one of our threats, then instead of having to go to a park and waiting for, which is kind of the stereotypical of how I grew up, of what those kinds of people would be, is that you can sit at home, type in your postcode, and then just see who pops up within that age range. If we add to that Google Maps and Street View, then we then get a bit of ownership of people, because the conversation will go something along the lines of, have you got a white door or a blue door? Well, I've got a white door. Has it got a 6 in it? Has it got a 9 in it? So I like 6. 6 is my favourite number. What's yours? What's your favourite number in your door? And you can do all kinds of things to then trick the youngsters into giving out which is their specific house. And you can then also say, oh, I got that chippy down the road. That's my favourite chippy. What do you get when you go on the chippy? And you can then, because, and you've seen this, have you ever been on holiday and you've met somebody, you know, you're waiting in a queue because the plane's late, and then they say, where are you from? And you say, we'll have to make up some Glasgow, a place I've heard of in Scotland. And they say, oh yeah, I've been to Glasgow, you know that pub on the corner, or I've been to that shop down the road, or I've been to something in the museum, I can't remember, there's a museum down in Arcade. Borough. Is that right? The Borough. Look at that, I know Scotland. And you then immediately kind of walk them and say, yeah, I've been there, they've got a new exhibition there, and that conversation starts. And it is that grooming that we do naturally. We do groom people to form that relationship. And so our kids then are very, very vulnerable. And so having some kind of balance when we're working with our youngsters to say, yeah, we want to have friends. The strangers are friends that we haven't met yet. That's our key part. But the other part of it is how do we try to make sure that we manage that risk? And then we get this. Have you seen this? This is beautiful. We talked about geolocations earlier. Did you know that insurance companies are starting to stop, not my best sentence, paying out if they can prove that you said you went on holiday? We're going on holiday for Tenerife on Friday for a fortnight. It's going to be lovely, and then your house is burgled in that fortnight, and if they can see that you've done that. So that then actually means that your youngsters need to be trained, need to be supported in. Don't tell anyone anything because you might be burgled. So the challenges get bigger and bigger. What I've been saying right from the outset, when we first started doing all the safety stuff, it became clear to me that, because my original examples were a child in France had been abducted, a girl in Canada had, and we're all thinking, well, it's miles away, you know, think for these things, and when it happens on your own doorstep, that it focuses the mind. And Ashley is from Darlington, which is one of our partner local authorities, and Ashley was murdered by a man that she met on the internet. And Ashley falls into that group that we talked about a little earlier, of being momentarily a little more susceptible, a little more vulnerable, even though perhaps she was one of the grey children. By no means dim, by no means stupid, by no means naive, but ready for and ripe for some attention. Now what is interesting and scary for us is that he was described as a drifter, so you don't know the geography, but Darlington, if you like, is in the west. its neighbouring local authority is Middlesbrough, and then we've got Stockton, and then we've got Hartlepool. And when I worked in Hartlepool, Stockton and Middlesbrough, social workers have said my girls were friends with him too. But they didn't go and see him, and they didn't go and see him for all kinds of reasons. It was too far, they couldn't be bothered, all that sort of stuff. And when you have a real issue, a real incident, it does focus your mind, because what we have to say is that is a remote risk, but it is a possibility, and we don't want it happening on our watch for two reasons: that we want to protect our children, and we also want to protect the reputation of our profession and our organisation. Is that right? So then we get to, well, vulnerable young adults can have and should have online relationships. They are real relationships, and they should have them. And Josie touched on this, that there is no difference between online and offline. And the frequent responses that I get from head teachers will be, that's it, I'm banning Facebook. For the staff and for the children. We won't have it. We're just going to filter it. It's too hard. And you can understand that they're personally liable. But on the other hand, they get paid a shed load of money. You know, that with great wealth comes great responsibility. That's what their responsibility is. So teachers and adults, maybe they're friends. What we need to do is to define what a friend is, and that takes us to an interesting place. What is it that you do to, and I'm asking you now because I don't know, what is it that you do to define friendship for your youngsters? You have to say something or you don't get your lunch, because I'm not moving on until I get an answer. Do you do friendship? Let me help. Do you have lessons on friendship?
We do with our S1 pupils. We kind of line that at the start, you know, what is friendship, and it means things to all different pupils, or somebody might meet at McDonald's, somebody might stay over with you, somebody you share a secret with, different.
Yeah.
It means different things to different people.
And there's something that we were talking about. One of the things that Carol does that I work with is that we draw a picture of the child or a representation of a child, and then we put their circle of activity or their interaction. So you'll have ballet, and you'll have football, and you'll have the shops, and then we will then look at the people in that circle and then define that friendship about what we would do with them. And we'll now move on to perhaps what is a more comfortable place for you, which is, what is your definition of a friend? Let's make it easier for you. What is the definition of your friend? How do you define a friend?
Somebody you like to spend time with?
Somebody you like to spend time with. Let's qualify that with then. Does that have to be face to face?
In the real world.
In the real world. So now we're doing. I'm not going to blame you. I'm going to come down. So you're not telling me that all the stuff that we're here for isn't real world. It's harsh of me. I know. I put you on a little spot.
Just mean that the friends that you have on Facebook would be people that you've actually had a face-to-face relationship with.
So we have to see them. So face-to-face, physical is a thing that you're going to say. And that's, are we all in agreement with that, that it has to be physical? Then why did we, when I was a youngster at school and as an earlier teacher, get kids to have pen pals with kids that they'd never met? Were they never going to be friends? Is there a distinction between pal and friend then? Is that what you're saying?
Just mention something. If you look at Twitter, for instance, we call followers not friends, which is kind of nice in a sense.
Yeah, but it gives you a biblical importance. I've got over 2,000 followers. you may take my sandals.
I would that's wrong. It actually does give you a biblical importance. I don't think it's used that way. I think it's used to avoid the word friend.
Yes.
I mean, the way I think about it.
But I follow him, which clearly shows I have impaired judgment.
You've got taste.
Possibly. So was there any other definition of friends? It was something about beating them in face-to-face, and something you like, was that right? Regardless then, I have to get through, because we're 22, Ollie, is that what we're aiming for?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Yeah, okay, which only gives me about 11 minutes, so we need to crack on a little bit. So understand that we could spend a lot of time on this bit here. Whether I ask kids or whether I ask adults, someone you like, someone you can trust, someone you've met. And so this then takes me to a peculiar place, which is, Shell Terrell is a woman that I met on the internet. Documentally is a man that I met on the internet. Both of them I arranged to meet in real life. Both of them I had a fondness for. And I've been thinking through what friendship is. People I've never met, but I've had Twitter conversations of 140 characters. Here they are here. So I've got Zoe Ross here. I don't know who she is. She looks pretty. And I'm 50, so you know, that's nice. And I'd done a resource thing, and somebody else had used it. Brilliant to hear. Makes me V happy. Smiley face at Simfit. Thanking me for this thing. I'm Simfit. There's some level of grooming there. Not deliberate, not malicious, but I warm to Zoe Ross, and I warm to Shell Terrell does this kind of thing. Gems I enjoy to follow. And she puts this sort of stuff up, and it's great. And so there's these little positive, all he knows what I'm talking about, those people who are on Twitter will know, it's these positive feedbacks that actually highlight to me that when we're talking about preparing our children for friends, is to understand that it's quite normal to be grooming one another, and that's what we do. And we actually groom each other in real life. It's a lot more subtle, because you never have a conversation with your mates where you say, shall we be friends now? Kids do it. Little kids, will you be my friend? Yes, I'll be your friend. And we've added that language to Facebook, which is, can I add you as a friend? For the rest of us, it's almost a process of osmosis, but you see it very clearly in relationships that develop online for us adults. And there are people like him, that I warm to, even though I've only just met. I'd seen you once before, but we haven't really spoken. So we're like pals before we met. Now what chance then our children who perhaps at some times are more vulnerable? And we can then say that what we need to do is to give our kids some kind of skills on choosing their profile pictures. So these are all profile pictures of 16, 17-year-olds. And so we can have a discussion with them about whether they are appropriate or whether they're not. That's a girl's one, it's hairy legs. So there's a lot of work for us to do when we're working with our vulnerable young adults, is to say, well, what are the messages that we get from these? What is it that is in that picture that is going to spoil it in terms of getting a job and having a positive influence on someone? And so this one up here is quite simple, which is the two fingers. So if we blocked out the two fingers, it's a nice picture of her in her mates. Which is the one that I would give a job to? Yeah, and I was doing this with a sixth form group, and I said, who's the one who's going to get the Saturday job off me?
One with the suit on.
The one with the suit on. And we have to say, you know, what was he thinking? He obviously just thinks he looks cool as mustard, doesn't he? I mean, he just thinks he looks the dog's bits there, doesn't he? This girl here could have done without the glass of wine, couldn't she? So we can say that we can do a lot of work with our youngsters in terms of profile pictures, as if it wasn't hard enough that we're talking about sexual predators all the time, and we can't dismiss that, but we need to understand the likelihood of this. Is that Ed Bald, some 2 years ago now, presented us with the extremist toolkit, and said that what we needed to do, if you've not read it, it said, if you see examples of extremism, then stop it. About that thing, but that's what it said. So how does that relate to us then? Well, it relates to us with this. Do you remember this? Plymouth, Exeter restaurant, a lad with learning difficulties and Asperger's syndrome, a converted Muslim, converted to Muslim, was told by his friends, let's be clear about this, if you want to be in our gang, if you want to be cool with us, if you want to be up with the guys, get yourself in the toilet in there, and then pull this lever, press this button, and you will be a hero. You will be the... And of course he does, but he's so rubbish at it, he just kind of damages himself, which is a tragedy in itself. He was all right. So understanding what the challenges are is much bigger than saying, well, it's all about making sure that some sexual predator doesn't take our children away from us. And we can look at this.
They're feral, cruel and ruthless. It's in their nature.
It makes me sick.
Vermin. They wander in packs.
These animals destroying people's lives.
That's civilization. Huh?
Something needs to be done.
She
That was a way to shoot you all. Let's sort these parasites out.
What's really frightening is that every line of dialogue in this film was a comment made by the public on UK newspaper websites about children. Join our campaign against the demonisation of children at barnardos.org.uk.
And Josie touched on something which again is one of my soapbox things, is until we can model appropriate behaviour as adults, then what chance our young children, our young people in our care, and certainly our young children with special challenges? Because here we can see that online bullying by adults, these are in newspapers, go and have a look at your local newspaper tonight, have a look at the main story, and people will be bashing out the most hateful comments because they're brave behind their keyboard. And your students, your children will say, well, I want to be brave behind my keyboard, I want to be that person who is normal. And talking about whether normal is right or not takes it to this kind of place here. I love this as an analogy. It's like that we live in Roman times. Someone decides whether the thumb is up or down. Whether it is John Edward and whether it's Cheryl Cole, and this is a fantastic thing. We talked about some of our learners being literal and naive. The person who gave this threat to Cheryl said, I'm going to kill every child in the UK who's called Cheryl, and because she'd sent the wrong person over X Factor. How does that impact on our children in our care when they read that kind of thing? Until we can start to model appropriate behaviour, there is no chance that our youngsters will be able to do it. And this is a typical, Helen was talking about MSN, which we see this kind of thing here. And what happens is our students struggle to keep up. Some of our students can't read quick enough. Some of our students miss it and they become mocked and they become victimised because they're not keeping up with what the conversations are. Because look at all these conversations that are going on here. And we do talk about kids being digital experts in this ability, because I can't, doesn't mean you can do it. But if I'm on the phone to someone and then someone asks, do you want a cup of tea? I can do neither. I stop functioning both ways. I can't say, yeah, I want a cup of tea, or hang on a minute. And yet our kids can manage to do all of this stuff. But what does that say there? Can anyone read it out to me? The big black letters?
Who you talking to?
Who you talking to? Or, who you talking to? Contextualising and understanding the difference between what is written and what is the literal meaning of it is a challenge that we need to practice and work with our children to do. And we can see this kind of thing over here. You can tell me what he said, find the email, FFS, the last word is sake. I'll shout to the next time I sing, like, really, kiss, kiss, kiss. And you get a load of that. You're dead tomorrow, lol. How will our learners, some of our learners, be able to deal with that? These are big challenges. And so we get the instructions that come by text. So take your clothes off. We saw this. You don't need me to kind of go over on this. You've already watched a video about it. It makes our children even more susceptible and vulnerable, doesn't it? Because they get that instruction. And it is very difficult. We've all done that where we've got a text and so what do they mean by that? Haven't we? We're pausing. We're unable to, what does this mean here? It will fill the heads of some of our youngsters and they will become obsessed by it. And we get this stuff here. These are real things. I'm not making these things up. Facebook puts a thumb in there, so people like this. And I was talking earlier that some of our youngsters can become the bully. Well, if 4 people like this, I'll like it too. Yeah, I better like it. I'll put my thumb up. Well, what do you mean you like it that somebody's going to get killed? We'll come and sort you out. And that's how our youngsters end up being falling victim. Some say they don't read the full sentences and they can't keep up with the stuff that's going on. And the difficult part of it is that we can see that with bullying, laugh at it, and you're part of it. And our youngsters can become part of it because they're the last ones still laughing. Because everybody else was laughing, because laughing is normal. The bad thing's happening, and they stand there and join in, I'll laugh with you. And I'll keep laughing until somebody tells me we don't laugh anymore. But by that point, they've been chinned and they've been victimised. And so we get this kind of thing here. Do you know what? We're going to probably miss a couple of slides here. This is an interesting thing, which is a head teacher came up with this. And there's bad things happening to your child online. Where does your school stop? Does your school stop at 5 o'clock? Does it deal with the stuff that happens at night? In a weekend?
Well, it spills back into the classroom.
It does come back to the classroom.
Whatever's happened at night
yeah.
comes back into the classroom. So you really have to deal with what's in the classroom we've suggested we go to local police about the actual things that happen at them.
What I would say at this point is I worked at an inner city school, challenging inner city school in Newcastle, and we reckoned it was our business whenever it was. So if kids were trashing the graveyard on a Saturday, then and parents would give us two responses. One is thank you for your support, and the other one is keep your nose out of our business, you finish at 4 o'clock. But it isn't managed because your world extends through to cyber world, which is 24/7. I'll skip that one, I'm going to move on. We've got to go, 22. Yeah. So I'll just share this with you a little bit. So where are we? I've got all of the stuff that we can do about how can we fix Facebook. Well, one of the things that we're seeing is deactivating the account. If you deactivate the account, and it is a bit laborious, do you want to deactivate it? But you get the hang of it. Nobody can write on the walls and post when you're not there, so it only happens when you're logged in. So there is something to be said for that. And whitewalling is something that I think that we will probably all do eventually, which is to delete the wall. We have read the post, thanks very much, and it's not sitting there to haunt us and to accuse us, and there's evidence of our misbehaviour or whatever uncomfortable stuff before. And that's, you know, that's sort of what we do with the rest of our lives. I've done that. Terry didn't get rid of it. And to know that cyberbullying is a crime, notify the police every blooming time. I want the police at the end, I want our Newcastle police, Northumbria police, at the end of the year to say, blooming heck, we've had 3,000 incidents of reported cyberbullying. I don't care whether they turn up and do anything, and that I think should be your challenge, is just keep reporting, get them coming in. And what I can say is our experience is the police have been absolutely fantastic. Not what I expected at all, which is not very helpful. And we can see that the law supports us. And this is actually saying that heads have got the reach to go out of school if they need to. Let me go on here now. So, passwords. What is it that you're doing to support them in making passwords? Kids should have passwords, and where they haven't got passwords, we have to have some kind of other strategy in there. But creating coding activities, it is a priority for them. But also, you know, I talked to Spectrum, I got teachers that are sharing passwords with each other. I got normal kids sharing passwords with each other. Real friends share passwords. What is normal is to be a bit lackadaisical and a bit careless with your password. We need to sort that. Why have we got to here? We have policies that go right across, and Josie said this, is that e-safety isn't some kind of compartmentalised thing. It should go right across your network, it should go across your technology, and it should go across your behaviours. We're doing some of this I'm doing this afternoon, if you come to the afternoon session, but you certainly don't need to. Sparkbox, do you know about Sparkbox? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're good with that. What that really means is that we need to be careful and mindful that we're sending kids to websites that we don't know who's behind. Manage the risk to the best of our ability. We can't, right? You know,
What's the deal with Sparklebox?
Sparklebox is a fantastic resource for primary schools. Loads and loads of great stuff. Turns out it's being run by a convicted child sex offender.
But Sparklebox 2 is resurrected now.
Yeah.
And is it the same?
No, they're saying no. They're saying no, but it's actually more about what you do when you're on the website, and it's encouraging kids or discouraging kids from interacting with. In the end, Sparklebox was all of the sticky labels for and activities, and that's where it should have been kept. We need to talk about how to prepare our children for work. There's poor Kimberly described a job as boring, and so she lost her job, but we should model it appropriately. We can see when the BA strike was going on, there was inappropriate tweeting. Show you this one here, Marks and Spencer's staff calling customers idiots and bastards, and police officers, British Airways calling passengers smelly and annoying, Virgin Atlantic calling passengers chavs. Until we model appropriate behaviour, then how can we expect it to be any other way? This is poor Naomi, who had a picture taken. Who took the picture of Naomi? Her friend. We need to work with our friends to make sure that they're not taking inappropriate pictures of us. We all have a responsibility for each other. I'm hoping that you've got something that sits something like this. You don't need to look at the details of it. Is it an adult? Is it a pupil? Is it illegal? Is it inappropriate? Is it deliberate or accidental? The challenge you have is that most people, if it's illegal, are going to say it was an accident. But you need to have this, and what I can say is that we work on this, and every time we have an incident we have to change it, and in yours you will insert the significant professionals that go alongside that. And then this is just this is my sprog. She has got a job demonstrating the Kinect Xbox. She gets £60 for standing in Comet or Asda every Saturday doing this thing. We talk about we're preparing our youngsters for jobs that don't exist yet. That job didn't exist last summer. It is gobsmacking, isn't it? I think, anyway. And so, It's all about needs, self-esteem and relationships for our pupils, and we need to be positive about this. Possibly for the first time when I was doing this session, when I was preparing this, I was getting an overwhelming, I don't want to sound kind of too gooey about this, I was getting an overwhelming sense of sadness that the kids that will benefit the most from social networks and internet activity are your kids. And yet, if we're not careful, they're the ones that are going to be excluded because it's too hard to find a way through it. In a sense, for normal kids, if we can say normal, and normal people, it's a nice luxury add-on to our already complicated and fulfilling social existence. The kids that you've got, it's a really emancipating tool, whether we're talking about deaf kids with webcams, or whether we're talking about blind children, or whether we're talking about kids that perhaps don't look normal. If you don't take anything else, then what we can say is there's no such thing as private, and nothing can be deleted. And I'm sure God understand much of that. Thank you very much. If you've got any questions, do please email. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time and your participation. Thank you. Yeah, send money. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron.